Time for another lesson. Today I want to do some demo at the frame. So anything you have that's sort of technique related, make sure you ask a question and do the double question mark so that I can scan it, because what I'll be doing after I do the demonstration is to scan back through the comments, and I'm looking for the double question mark. So if you didn't put in a double question mark, I might not see it. But let's give this a whirl, and let me kick this over to my frame. And today is Tuesday, so I guess before I do that, I should say my name is Cindy Gay. If you're new here, you might not know me. Type new in the comments so that I can welcome you. But I am a rug cooking teacher and artist. I live in Northwest Ohio. I've been teaching for about 20 years. I've been an artist all my life, and I finally feel like I found my medium when I found rug cooking. It satisfies everything. So if you're just new to rug cooking, welcome to our world, and realize that it can be overwhelming, but it's really the simple process of sticking in your hook and pulling up a loop, and that's it. Everything else is just a variation. So don't stress over it. You're probably doing it the right way. You can hook with anything you want, and I'll tell you why if you've got questions. I see some questions that I'll answer in a few minutes, but let's go over to the frame and let's get into that. Okay, so let me see what you can see. This camera is even set up differently than the other one. Hold on a minute. No, I'll just deal with it. I'll just move this up a little bit further. Okay, so this star is the star I hooked Friday. And you guys were getting my head coming into the view, and it was blocking what I was doing. I changed the configuration of the camera, and I think I have a better view, but I want to take the opportunity to re-hook the star. But also what I want to show you is the proper, and I'm doing air quotes, you can't see them, the proper way of ripping out. If your wool is a little bit delicate, and if you grab this and you just pull, that wool has to go down through that hole and then come back up through that hole, right? So it gets a little extra agitation. But if you reach underneath and you grab that piece of wool and you pull it down to the bottom and then rip out that way, it's going to be a little bit easier on your wool. Now, do I do it that way every time? Absolutely not, because sometimes that takes too much time. But if you've got a delicate wool that you want to reuse, that is the way to rip it out. Let me get a little bit positioned better here for the microphone. Okay, so I hooked another star on the back, because the other part of this lesson is that rug warp, or any backing that you hook on, has two sides. So if you draw a pattern on one side, or if you've got a pattern on one side that you don't like, you can always turn it over and hook on the other side, right? So let's hook this star. Now, I do not use the method of starting at a corner. I know some people do that. I don't like the look of it. So if you're using it and you like the look of it and it's working, then hooray, you found your technique. But if you're like me and you don't like that look, then what I do is I start on the straight part of the star, and noticed that I am hooking well inside that line. When I pull up that first loop, I want the black of the outline to be sitting there where I can see it. If you're hooking on the line, half of your loop is going this way, the other half is going that way, and you're half wrong. It's not going to look the way the designer intended. So I'm going to hook up to here, and I'm going to change directions And notice what I do with my hand. The direction of my hand simply changes. I'm not spinning the frame around. When I get to the point where one loop has filled up that point, I still have more to hook, but all it's going to do is make that point fat. What I'm going to do is come up here a bit and grab a loop and turn it sideways. Now, if you're not hooking with wide cuts, none of this is going to matter, because a number 3 is the same size this way as it is this way, right? But when you get into these wider cuts, then you have to have a little bit more technique and method. So now I need to fill in the rest of this angle of the star. So I'm going to come down here and pull up a loop again sideways, and then come out and start hooking it normally again, and then come up this way until I fill it up. I'm going to go one more on this one and then do it sideways. Notice how my hand has changed. I always want to hold the hook perpendicular to the direction that I want the loop to go. And then when I come back down this other way, I got to skip a bit and then pull that up sideways and then come back down the other direction. Okay, so I think that gives you an idea of how that works, and hopefully my hand hasn't been in the way the entire time. So let's talk about hooking a corner. How do you go about changing direction? Okay, so let's say I am going to be hooking here along this line, and when I'm hooking perfectly in the ditch, I will often draw a line like this with pencil. So because my eyesight up close is not good at all, so that I can then just stick the hook in about where it needs to go. I don't count holes. And then when I know that I want to change the direction, I know that I want to start hooking on this line going this way. Okay? What I'll do is normally about 2 loops would fill up this space. So instead of 2, I'm going to pack it a little bit tighter. So I'm going to get 3 in here. Now what happens from the side? Let me see. This is not going to be a real graceful switch because my iPad is not open for business yet, but let me get that. Okay, so what happens when you pack? I'm dropping things. Oh no, and I'm wedged in here so tight. How the heck am I going to get that? Hold on. Oh, comedy of errors, if you could see this. What happens when you're hooking? There's your backing. Here's your loops that come up. And they bloom. If you only pull them up too short, they're just going to do this. And you're going to have to put them much closer together like this instead of this far apart. So you want to pull them up tall enough so that they bloom. But when you start packing, what happens is this. There's not enough room for them to stand upright like they are here. Oops. So they start leaning to the side. But that's exactly what you want to have happen on the corner. And the reason for that is when you're coming up this little row here and you're ready to hook, say those 3 loops there, and you've got your hook in that little hole, and now you want to go back on that same row and you put a loop there. The problem is you end up with this bald little rounded corner. Okay, it's not a crisp corner, And you want it to be. Sometimes you don't want it to be, but let's say you did. So what you would do instead is, instead of putting 2 loops in there, I'm going to pack in 3 in the same amount of space. And what that looks like from the side is this. So when I start hooking in this hole right here going in another direction, this one is leaning enough that it fills in the space, right? So let me go back to this guy. Okay, I just want to stop for a moment because it looks like some of you are having problems with the video buffering. If you are on a mobile device, my best tip to you is to turn off Bluetooth. When you turn off Bluetooth, at least in the test I've done, it doubles your internet speed. So Sharon, if you're on a mobile device, turn off Bluetooth. If other people in the house are watching Netflix or things like that, ask them to take a little break, and then you'll be able to watch the video just fine. So what I've done here is I've packed these last 3 loops. So this last one is leaning. So when I come and I hook up this line, and I like to put that first one snug up against the rest of them, it lines up perfectly. And it fills in that square just so. Because if I don't do that, let's take out those last couple and spread them out more like I would normally. And this one's not leaning much. Let's put this one there. See how it kind of jogs right there? It doesn't have that crisp ending. So pack at least the last 3 loops. And then then it'll do exactly what you want it to do. So let's go back to here and let me see what your questions have been. Okay, I'm looking for double question marks. Monica is saying, how do you hook water? Well, Monica, the problem with that question, or the problem with my answer for that question, is that there are so many different kinds of water. It really needs to be a specific, you have to hook what you see. So you have to have a photograph that you use as a reference and then hook exactly what you see. Now that takes time to figure that out. And if you're creating your own pattern and you're tracing it and you're figuring out where the lines change or where the values change, that'll help you with the understanding. I also will put tissue paper down over the photograph and then with markers go in and color it with light, medium, and dark and try to figure out where light, medium, and dark goes. Once you figure out the pattern, because a stream is different than a calm pond, which is different than a lake, which is different than mid-ocean, which is, yeah, it goes on and on and on. There are no hard, fast rules for water. It all depends on what kind of water it is. Janet says, I would love to learn how to hook a face. Well, Janet, you are in luck. I am working on a lesson for how to hook a face. I do recommend that the first time you hook a face, you hook a face you don't know. Hook an imaginary face rather than trying to capture a likeness. That's a lot of stress your first time out. You need to learn the structures of a face. And then once you have that, then you'll be able to identify what's unique about that particular face that you're trying to capture the likeness of. And you'll have a much better chance at it. And that my class focuses on that. It was a class I taught at Teachers Workshop probably 15 years ago. And I'm just gathering some of those old documents. I have to find the patterns for the lips. So as soon as I can find that, it'll be good to go and it'll be released. Rebecca says, do you ever hook with yarn instead of wool? Occasionally. I don't like the feel of yarn hooking. There are times and a place for it. Like, for instance, I like to use a brown, heathery kind of yarn for accent details in like a landscape, particularly if you don't have a number 2 cutter. That works out really, really well. But just for filling in areas, I don't enjoy that process, so I personally do not hook with yarn. But I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people really enjoy the process. And can you mix yarn with strips? Absolutely. But I don't hook with yarn, mainly because I enjoy the cut strips so much more. Heather says, I married the best beige bundle and it turned out great. Yay! Arlene says, I would like to know if windows should be hooked diagonally or vertical. Oh, don't ever hook them diagonally. Oh my God. I know there was a trend on that probably 10 years ago, and people were hooking pink windows. Someone somewhere said windows should be pink, and all of a sudden, all you saw was a bunch of diagonally hooked pink windows. And it was like, am I the only one who doesn't think this is working? It just did not seem to work for me. I would look at that and I would look at a window and it was like, I don't see any correlation. I actually hook windows, Arlene, the easiest way possible. So if I have, let's go here. So if I have a, I really got to look into this to see if I can keep this from turning off. If I have, say, a window like this, you know, which is pretty common, right? And of course, I'm going to hook this area in a white trim and take care of it that way. And then when I'm ready to come in with something else, I'm going to pick a brown. That's not the color I would use. I would use the window wool that I sell on my website. I simply start in a corner and I hook this way, I hook this way, I hook this way, I go up to here, and I do that until it's filled in. That is the easiest way to hook a window without seeing a lot of lines in it. If you hook it this way, you tend to notice a bunch of lines. If you hook it this way, you tend to notice a lot of lines. This tends to mess things up just enough where your eye looks at it and you go, oh, that's a window. Okay, I'm done. But don't ever hook it that way. That is going to be the hardest way of hooking it. It's going to stretch. Anytime you hook on the diagonal, it's going to stretch unevenly. You're not going to get nice square windows. And I think, in my opinion, the effect that you get by doing that does not warrant the extra time and trouble it takes to hook it diagonally. But that's just my opinion. What is the best start and stop? And is there more than one way? Elizabeth, I'm not sure I know exactly what you're asking, but I'm going to read into it. You're asking, do I hide my tails? And the answer to that is an emphatic no, okay? The reason for that is I just don't think it's effective, okay? So let me show you what I think Elizabeth is mentioning. There is a method where you pull up a strip, you go backwards one row, and then you go forward. And it's supposed to be better because not all your tails are at the end. No, they're all one loop in. I don't see how that changes anything. So the way I start is the same way I stop. I pull it up and that is it. And I move on from there. If I am hooking and I get to a certain point where I've got plenty of strip left, but I don't want to hook any more of that color, I pull up a big loop, I cut it at the top, I pull the wool down from underneath. That's probably the most important lesson I can give you about starting and stopping. And Elizabeth, if that didn't answer, then give me a little bit more information. Betty Jean says, I have been hooking for 1.5 years and I still twist my loops at times. Lately, I seem to be doing it more often. Any guidance? What you are probably doing, Betty Jean, is when you stick the hook in, instead of scooping it, you're taking that yarn and this hand is moving. If this hand moves, stop it, okay? If you want to stop twisting, okay? Twisting isn't necessarily a problem. If you're hooking a landscape, it can be your best friend. People who pull up super even, super straight loops do not have the best landscapes, okay? Because it looks unnatural. A twisted loop every now and then and crooked loops are much better in a landscape. So when you go down, you're going down and you're scooping up that loop. You're not taking this hand and moving it, okay? And it's actually, it'll take some practice, but it's actually more efficient movement-wise, and you'll be able to hook faster. But that's what I would pay attention to. What is your left hand doing? It has nothing to do with your hook and what you're doing. It has to do with what your less dominant hand is doing. If you're wrapping that yarn, that's what is introducing the loop. Carol is asking, how do you know when to hook in a puzzle piece? When you want the direction of your loops to disappear. So there are times when you want to hook in rows, okay? Hooking in rows will actually strengthen the design. Like if you're hooking a deck, you're going to be hooking that in rows because those are like the boards laid down, right? You don't want to hook grass like you hook a deck, right? Because that would not be right. But you don't necessarily want to use puzzle pieces. You might want to use something kind of in between. Hooking in the method that I teach in my book, Pine Trees, Grass, and Sky, How to Hook Pine Trees, Grass, and Sky. That might be a better way of doing it. But when you use the puzzle piece method, which is my favorite method for background, then you're doing that because you want the loops to disappear. You don't want the loops to play a part in whatever it is you're hooking. Donna says, I am new and have a hard time not packing. Also, do you know anyone who teaches left-handed? I don't think you necessarily need a left-handed teacher. You just need to like sit across from someone and watch what they're doing, because it's really the same thing, just done with your left hand, and your right hand is what's holding the strip that you go in and get. As far as packing goes, it has to be something that you do early on. And if you haven't done it yet and you are a packer, stop, hook something small and insignificant, and just tell yourself that you are going to stop packing and you're going to teach yourself how to do it today. And what you do is you hook it with the rows and with the loops as far apart as you can tolerate. Because it's a small, insignificant piece, right? It doesn't matter if you leave a hole. Spread those out. See how far you can spread them. Now, why is packing bad? Packing will make your rug really hard, okay? So you don't have that nice squishy feel that a rug should have. It's going to be hard. It's going to curl, okay, or create a hump in it. You can often steam that out, but what you can't get rid of is the stress that you've put on your backing. And the backing is going to wear out faster than the wool does. So we want to do everything we can to make our backing happy, right? So spread those loops out. You'll use less wool. You will be pulling up less loops, so you'll complete a project much faster, and you're not going to be leaving holes. I teach a lesson. If you go to my website and click and search for holiday, a holiday is a break in your work, right? What packers are afraid of leaving. You are going to leave holidays, but you're going to go back when you're all done and find them and plug them. So don't worry about it, okay? Just hook, relax, spread them out. Just take a moment and try to do that. Your future rugs will love you for it. Dara says, have you ever had occasion to pull smaller cuts like a number 3 and 4 up higher than their width on purpose to achieve a certain effect? Yeah, I have. Dara, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're in the rug cooking journey. Go to the Creative Stitches course. And in that, I teach high-low. I think there's another lesson called high loops. Definitely you can pull them up higher when you're mixing 3s and 4s in with something that you hooked to number 8. You're going to be pulling those up higher just to match the level of the number 8s. So definitely, yeah, you'll be doing that as a regular thing that you do. Betty Jean says, I need to enlarge something to draw. Is there a program you use on your iPad or PC to do that? I think you mentioned one you use. Well, the one that I like to use is this little guy here, which, let me wake up that iPad. Come on. Have y'all noticed that if you're in a store and you're looking at your phone, it doesn't recognize your face with a mask on it? I've noticed that. This is called Graphic. I think I've got the camera zoomed in so you can't see some of the stuff at the top. Let me find that window where I can adjust the camera. This is what it looks like on your iPad screen. This right here on the left-hand side is the app. And unfortunately, I can't draw on the home screen, but it's the last row on the right, the third row down. That's the app that you're going to want. And what I like about it, and what most hookers will use almost exclusively, is going to be the pencil, and you're simply going to draw with that pencil. Now, one thing I added to my iPad just recently is a paper-like screen protector, and this actually feels like I'm drawing with a pencil on paper, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I liked it before with just the glass, but oh my God, with this paper-like. And I bought an off-brand, and if you want the link, just email me and I'll send you the link to the exact one I bought. I absolutely love it because I can write things and it looks like my handwriting. It doesn't look like I'm writing on glass, because when I write on the iPad without the protector, my handwriting looks different than it does. I can also write faster. So if I'm using this to take notes or something, it makes this a little bit easier from that point of view. So that app is called Graphic. It's about $7.99. I don't think they have an Android version unless they've come up with something recently. Last time I checked, it only had Mac and it only had iPad. So if you don't have, this is an iPad Pro, so, and it's actually the second generation. So I've got the fancy second generation pencil. It does not plug in. It just goes, and you get a case like this, and you just drop it in there, and it's charging right now just because it's in there. which is really, really cool. The old ones, you have to charge it in. It would often become unsynced, and it just bugged me. I want it ready to go when I'm ready to go. I don't want to prepare for that. So for me, it was worth it at that point to buy the new iPad and get that. But if you have an old iPad, maybe even one way before you can even use a pencil, because this one in the older pencil only work on the newer iPads, but you can get a simple pen, and I don't happen to have one, but a lot of banks give them out. It's just a simple pen, and it's got that rubber on the top. You can draw with that. Now, it's not pointy. It's like drawing with your index finger instead of a sharpened pencil. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. But if you have nothing, hey, that's better. And I did that for years. You can do it with a computer using your mouse. But if you've ever tried to draw with your mouse, holy cow, that's a whole new skill set that I was not willing to learn. I bought a Wacom tablet, and that had a pencil, and I would draw on the tablet, but you're still drawing on your desk and looking at your screen. Well, with the iPad, it's all right there. So that's why I like the iPad. But I'm not sure what you mean, Betty Jean, by I need to enlarge something to draw. So if I didn't answer your question, ask it again. April says, I am still struggling with turning to make parallel lines just for the first loop. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back here. And normally what would happen is if someone was hooking a bunch of parallel lines, they would end it at the beginning and the end, and you end up with these ugly line of tails. Now, if you use textures like I do, the textures hide your tails, so it's not so much an issue. It's really just an issue with solid wool. So let's say I'm coming up this direction, and I'm hooking up this direction. And if you notice, I'm not pulling straight up. I'm kind of rolling it with each time. And when I want to go, and let's say I want to put another row here on the outside of this, instead of changing my hand, just the same way I would make a loop here, I'm going to make a loop right next to it. And I'm going to pull up that first loop. So these two loops were hooked as if it was this one and that one. Then I can change my hands and come down in the opposite direction. And I have a little bit more trouble hooking from the top down than I do from bottom up, which is why you'll usually see me demo something from the bottom up, because I can hook that much faster. Now that's not going to stay perfectly where it needs to go until it gets the rest of the hooking around it. So don't judge it too harshly. It'll behave itself. It'll do what it's supposed to do. You just got to be patient with it, and don't fuss over hooking everything in one color before you go on. If you need something across the top there to hold that, hook that line in. Get that line in. Well, just a little bit of a advertisement for my monthly wool sale. Elizabeth came to the wool sale. She's a new rug hooker, and she got a wonderful collection of wools to build her stash. And Arlene is saying, I'm using your wool and working on the wonky house stool. Yay! Okay, so why is my cursor going funky on this? There we go. Okay. Would I ever use fabric that is 80% wool? Personally, no, because I don't have to. I don't like the way it feels. Now, think about why we use 100% wool. It's not because we're on a campaign to derobe sheep or anything along that line, right? Wool has this wonderful property that nylon, that rayon, that cotton, that just about any other fiber does not have. And that is the ability to stay clean. It doesn't absorb moisture. It doesn't just get dirty from dust. It just stays clean all the time, no matter how badly you abuse it. You can walk on a wool rug with muddy shoes and leave a muddy footprint. It'll dry. You take a vacuum and you clean it off, and you usually don't even see a mark on where it is. You did that on something that's not 100%, that's got a 20% component. You might have to get in there a little harder and work on cleaning it. So that's why I like 100% wool. Catherine says on a PC, you can use paint to print an enlargement of your drawing. Absolutely. And unfortunately, I don't know Spanish, and my broadcasting software does not have a translator. So if someone can translate that, I would be happy to answer that question, but I don't know what the question is. Okay, that's the last of the questions that I can see. Friday's lesson, I still don't know what the topic is. I was really struggling today to come up with a topic. So if you have a suggestion for a lesson or something that you want to learn about a little bit more in depth, let me know. Send me an email. You can ask a question here. I am going to try, because water often gets asked. I do teach water in some of the landscape classes, but I think I will do up some simple lessons on how to do that. Elizabeth says, I am working on my very first official piece. I would not know if I was packing at this point. When I take it off the frame, it bubbles slightly. Will blocking take care of that? Maybe. Depends on your backing, depends on how badly it's packed. Elizabeth, the best way to check is to hook a straight line. Just hook a straight line with nothing else around it, and then take it off the frame and look at it from the side and look at the loops, and then kind of put an imaginary line through them. Are they all standing up perfectly straight, or do the ones at the end lean forward? Okay, then you'll know that you are packing. And Carol, water in the middle of the ocean, I will actually be teaching that to you in the virtual online workshop soon. Debbie says, I am working on the IKEA stool. Do I hook up to the outside border line, sew the sides? Or do I need to stop a couple rows back in order for it to fit? Hook just inside the lines, just like you would for any other pattern. So you're not going to hook on the line, because then it'll be too big. You want to hook just inside that line. Then when you sew it together, look forward in your videos. If you're in the IKEA stool course, look forward in those videos, and then you'll see, and it'll make sense. Because then what you'll do is you'll sew it together, and then you'll hook 2 more rows to fill in those corners. Okay, so that's going to be your best way to do that. Okay. Norma says, I'd love to know how to hold the hand that's feeding the wool. It depends on your preference, and it depends on the direction that you're going. I will hold it like this, and then sometimes pick it up from there. I'll hold it like this, and hold it in front of whatever direction that I'm going, and then scoop it up from there. I did a video a bit back a ways Norma, I can't remember if you're in the rug hooking journey. I know it would probably be in there. I don't know if it's a public video, so you might have to go through some of the older videos and see if there's one about hooking. And I hook through a window screen so that you can actually see what my hand's doing underneath. My preferred backing, I just did a video on that just last week, I think. I have an older video on YouTube. Actually, I think they're both now on YouTube. But go to YouTube and check and just search for Cindy Gay backing and then watch those videos. I definitely prefer rug warp, which is what I'm hooking on here. And in those videos, I explain why. Okay, that's it, everybody. I'm done with the questions. Thank you so much for coming. Tomorrow is our Wednesday hook-in. If you haven't been to one of those, you are missing out. You need to use Zoom. So if you've used Zoom for like maybe family calls during this COVID thing, or to meet with other people, you know all about how to do it. All you need is the link. To get the link, you simply go to my website, cindygayrughooking.com, and look for the live lesson and hook in. Click on that and it'll give you information on what you need to do. You will need to download the Zoom app, and you can do that anytime. You can click on the link to test it to see if it works. And tomorrow it starts officially at 4. I'm usually there a few minutes early. Click on it. Come see us. Come hook with us. And we usually stick around for about 90 minutes. So that's it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later. Thanks. And my mouse all of a sudden stops working.